There's a few ways you can kind of play Instagram and TikTok's algorithm, and it's pretty much through rage bait. And my goal to begin with was to just expose my content to as many eyeballs as possible.
You posing in the Gymshark HQ with the sponsorship announcement, how did that feel?
That was a pinch me moment. When I was 15, that would have been the end goal right there. Why are people buying training programs from people that look good on Instagram? There's no correlation between someone looking really good and them being, one, a good coach, knowing anything about fitness or nutrition. The ball just keeps rolling. That's it. Like, what's the next big thing?
The goal of this channel has always been to explore and look to understand why things are the way they are, combining curiosity, ambition, and an optimistic outlook on both yourself and the future of the world around us that some might even describe as delusion. From the start, I knew that this podcast would be a key part of that vision, having conversations with guests about the depths of their fields and the hows of their journeys. If there's one thing I found in common between all the guests coming on, it was their mindset of embodying their goals and giving themselves the permission to be before they became, which inspired the name Delusion By Design. From the off, I knew that the first guest I wanted to have on was Reade, a fitness creator with over 400,000 followers between Instagram and TikTok. He's competed in bodybuilding, works a full-time job in finance, and has been able to create multiple income streams for himself at 24 years old. I had the pleasure of growing up alongside Reade and seeing his journey firsthand. Here's our talk as we dive into his experiences as a creator, his thoughts on the fitness industry, sponsorships, and how he's managed to do everything he's done while being a full-time finance bro.
Yeah, I mean, before we get started, just for the people coming in through your audience that are used to either your short form videos or people that don't have any exposure to you before, would love to know a little bit about how you got to where you are today, what your stories look like generally so far.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose I can start from the fitness perspective. I joined Better Gym back in 2015. It was the only gym that allowed 15/16-year-olds to join at the time. So they were quite lenient, and a lot of people from, our school, because obviously, I say obviously, but Antonio and I went to the same school. That's how we first met. And we sort of had a little clique, a little gang that went to this Better Gym after school. We got very obsessed with fitness. This was sort of at the inception of fitness Instagram, looking back. It was the David Lade era, 2015, 2016. And yeah, it was a great time because there was so much exploring you could do in terms of training, nutrition. It was all so new. And I just knew that I loved it from the second I stepped in the gym. So I pursued that from the age of 15 to 16. And the rationale to start the Instagram, which is, I started on a different page at the time, which was now my personal page. The rationale was, I'm taking, progress pics anyway, I might as well post them and just share my journey, essentially. But probably very similar story to many people. But yeah, that's sort of scaled quite well. Again, I think Instagram fitness content sort of hit a crescendo probably in 2017, at least from my perspective. Obviously, it's still growing and it's very saturated at this point, but 10 years down the line, everyone's going to say it's saturated. So there's always room to add more names. But yeah, I started the Instagram, sort of scaled that. I think around 2019, 2020, I decided I didn't want to do it anymore. I think more of the reason for that was I just wanted to take some time for myself. I was focusing on my studies, which I guess that leads nicely into, as an undergrad, I did finance. I'd say I'm very numbers driven in the sense that I love analytics. I love proving things through data. So for me, looking at a question, it's so nice to be able to answer it with a precise answer, which is something I love about finance, because it does provide a framework to give you that precise answer, which again is may not even be the right answer, but it is an answer, which is a little bit nicer, I guess, for my brain to comprehend. So yeah, I was doing my undergrad. I was working at the time. I didn't prioritize anything posting on Instagram. I didn't see the need to do that. I reopened my Instagram page back in 2022 under the guess, brand name, ReadeReps.
The infamous.
Which I will say is a banging name. I'm proud of that one.
I back it.
It's a good name. So yeah, the ReadeReps was born in June of 2022. Funnily enough, the day I finished my undergrad exams, I started the Instagram page. I was like, this will be my summer project, because otherwise I'd get bored. I had a brief period of time between my undergrad summer and the start of my master's in finance, and that was the project. That was it, and it took off. It scaled much faster than I had imagined, and it opened up a lot of opportunities. And I guess here we are today. So I guess from a full-time perspective, I work in fintech. I work as a bank analytics and partner bank manager. So that is the full-time gig. I would consider that full-time. And then I suppose as my side hustle, it's the gym content on Instagram. Yeah.
Definitely, man. I mean, a good picture painted there. And I think you're someone who's very interesting because you have the whole creative side to you where you're posting, and, I want to get into how you started getting into content super young. But you also have the whole analytical, finance-driven, empirically tested data aspect to you. And they both live like in good conjunction with each other. And I think one actually plays into the other very well. But kind of circling back into the creative side specifically, I know you started super young with photography and with making things look cool and posting on Instagram. Even before what is now your personal page, I think you had 13, 12 years old, posting pictures of yourself from the park and going down that whole route. I know you did YouTube a bit back when you were young, but you said you quit for a while and then you went back into it. So I'm curious, what was the click that made you go, this is what I'm going to be doing now, a couple years ago when you decided to start ReadeReps?
Yeah, so there were a few things. During COVID, all the gyms were shut down. It was sort of a low point for me because the one thing I loved doing, I was unable to do it. I had to I tried some calisthenics, but didn't hit the same. So I got really, I suppose, obsessed with going for runs and not eating a lot of food. It was sort of, almost masochistic in a way, that I was just challenging myself to just get as lean as possible, just train as much as possible, and it wasn't great for me mentally. So during that period of COVID, it was probably a low point for me. And as soon as gyms opened back up, I sort of refound that love for just going to the gym every day, doing an ample amount of weights, doing some cardio too, but also eating more. They all sort of, they're synergistic. And as soon as I regained that love, I just felt like it was time for me to come back on the grab. No real reason other than I thought I had a formidable physique in the sense that it had potential to do well with brands. Not that I was really considering that at the time, but I suppose when I was younger, I always thought, wow, it'd be very cool to work with these brands like Gymshark. And, I guess I did get sold on the lifestyle from certain people. And I thought also it would be a good opportunity to extend my, streams of revenue, diversify a bit, because the one thing you don't want is the concentration risk of just, getting sacked from your full-time job and have nothing else going on, or vice versa. So for me, it's always been about diversifying streams of revenue, creating as many opportunities as possible. And I also knew from my past experiences that probably the largest upside would be the people you meet through social media. And I will still stand by that. I've met some amazing individuals, and that was it. Yeah.
100%. And I think especially on that last point first, you do meet a lot of really cool people.
Yeah.
Because there's a reason these people actually gather crowds to watch them, right? And just having access to them and being able to exchange ideas, and, some of them consider your friends in the end of the day, is, it's a cool thing to be able to do in the first place. And, you touched on sponsorships, income streams. I want to dig into all of that too. But what I find interesting is, you mentioned formidable physique, absolutely. But realistically, you're not the only one out there that has a really cool physique that you're able to put out there. So in order to actually gather the attention and the audience you have, there needed to have been something beyond the physique.
Yep.
Right. And that's where I think it links back to your analytical mind, right? And the way that you think about things and test things and put things into perspective. So when it came to actually approaching content, how did you determine like, okay, this is the direction I'm going to go down. This is going to be my style.
Yeah. So I think in terms of outward looking posting content, I think obviously it helps to have the USP of, just being yourself, like being able to naturally be articulate on camera, convey what you're trying to say, and also, have a persona that people can get behind. But then looking back at the types of content that did well, initially, I mean, it's changed a lot. And that's one thing I will say. But even before I started out, I would almost say I did some market research on what was doing well, what was trending on Instagram, TikTok, the type of content. And, looking back on that type of content, I wouldn't do that anymore because, I mean, there's a few ways you can kind of play Instagram and TikTok's algorithm, and it's pretty much through rage bait, which a lot of content that I posted initially was because it garnered a lot of interactions through people fighting in the comments section, even something stating, a fact, well, I'd say a fact, but, there's always two sides of the coin. People will disagree and agree on practically everything. But if you open up that conversation in the comments section, and that warrants a lot of sends to group chats, which on Instagram is actually a massive metric for how well a post will do, depending on how many sends it gets. And so I did a lot of market research, and I figured, okay, with my physique and sort of my research on this, I could potentially gain followers relatively quickly. And my goal to begin with, which has slightly changed now, was to just expose my content to as many eyeballs as possible. That was what I was optimizing for. I wasn't optimizing for building a personal brand, because that type of content does not build a good personal brand. You'll look at, these pages with millions of followers, and you can just tell the engagement is awful because no one is actually connecting on a real level with this person. The content is super generic. One example I would see is, even currently, this is sort of the trend at the moment with online coaches. So they'll compare two sets of food. One of them would be like a full sugar Coca-Cola versus like however many Coke Zeros, like 100 Coke Zeros, whatever it is. And then people will fight in the comments and be like, oh, like, it's not so much about calories. And other people will be like, yeah, it's great to get a lot more volume in per calorie, that sort of thing. So that type of content always warrants reactions. You want people to fight in the comments. But at the same time, once you have built that sort of following, it's easier to convert because you already have, a guaranteed number of eyeballs on your next piece of content. So that was the initial thought process. And for a long period of time, I did create just that content, that rage bait, which does very well on TikTok. It also does very well on Instagram. So my, best performing videos from a views and sends perspective were those type of videos. But it wasn't the content I particularly enjoyed making because, yes, I would have an opinion on what I was saying, and there would be some element of truth to what I'm saying, but I knew what I was doing, right? And I think my approach now is very much how I can create this community of people that follow me, that interact with my content, but more so for who I am as a person rather than, seeing a video and feeling the need to be like, express their opinion in the comment section. So it's all, and with regards to the brands I work with too, it's sort of a prerequisite that I need to have this personal brand in order to generate sales for the clothing brands. Yeah, but I think to begin with, I was very meticulous with the way I was going about things. There was definitely intention with that, and I always, I would never actually use TikTok to consume content. Me personally, I don't watch a lot of TikTok. I don't scroll through Instagram at all. So because quite frankly, you could get lost. Absolutely. I mean, I'm sure it's sort of a rabbit hole. So I would really just use it for I guess market research to see what is performing well, how I can incorporate elements into my content whilst also maintaining that personal brand. So
yes, intentful consumption, right? Like going in with a purpose of, okay, this is what I want to get out of it. And sometimes you even need to train the algorithm, right? Like actually engage with and like the type of posts you want to see, even if you do that on a backup account just so that you use that for market research so that you can get fed the type of things that you actually learn from, right? But what you mentioned is interesting because it's kind of two ways to go about it. And I feel like a lot of people, not just in fitness, but trying to get into content creation, becoming an influencer in the first place, get the balance wrong. Because either they go entirely all in on the rage bait and trying to create this content that brings a bunch of comments, brings a bunch of shares, and drives up their engagement, or they try to go for the connecting with the audience right from the get-go without actually having the scale of audience to actually lead to anything significant, especially if their goal is to work with brands, right? Because you need to have the numbers, but you also need to be able to convert. So based on that, you mentioned your strategy, doing one first, then going more for the other. But for someone starting out, in terms of the roadmap to take nowadays, also because the algorithms change all the time and things look different now than they did in 2022 when you started, how would you recommend someone, especially in the fitness industry, would actually be able to go up and take a similar kind of route that you did?
So I think it's always evolving, and perhaps this advice wouldn't get the best results, but I would say to begin with, you need to consider your USP. For me, look-wise, it's being a redhead. I'm already in a very small subset of people. Redhead, jacked, not completely ugly, I would say. So it's, you're already cutting into a very small group of people. It's already a niche that you can tap into because you have a look that is different from others. On top of that, I would say for someone starting out in fitness who maybe doesn't have the physique, then you need a killer personality. You need something really special about your personality and type of content. And there's already someone that comes to mind for me. It's I actually don't know his name. I should know his name. But he makes videos about protein content in food. And it is a concept. So basically he'll have, a kilogram of cheese in front of him and he'll state how much protein is in the cheese, and then he'll go on to eat that, right? And it's content that you would enjoy watching because it's just so outrageous, similar to perhaps Mr. Beast, counting to whatever number for a 24 hours, or it's content that no one wants to do because it's bizarre, but it's really good to send to people and just be like, wow, look at this, and that's replicable. But then you also need to create other content to feed into the brand message. And yeah, so that's one side to it. So if you don't have the physique or a certain look, you need to really figure out what kind of content would get those views, do well with the algorithm, but also something you can replicate over and over. You can milk that concept, and then that will naturally lead into something else. For me personally, I've milked these ginger exercise videos because I'm not even Irish to begin with, so I feel like a bit of a fraud creating them. But I actually, it's not an original concept. I saw someone that did this, and the way I looked at it was, well, okay, this guy, to be completely frank, doesn't look like he goes to the gym. He's making videos like this. I think I can provide better production, obviously the physique to back it up, and I think I could be more creative with it. So I replicated his idea. It did very well, my best performing video, and I've just been milking that because people like to see it. It does really well with the algorithm. So actually, I guess on a follower to non-follower outreach basis, it's always around 95% non-followers in terms of outreach. So much better than any post I would put up, or any feed post rather. Much better than most other reels I perform. So I almost use that as maybe even a bi-weekly outreach to hit new followers. To hit a new audience, because otherwise you can be very constrained with this community you've built. The way it works these days is even if you have a certain number of followers, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be hitting all those followers on each post. So you do need to I guess kind of keep your funnel open in terms of hitting these new accounts. And success breeds more success. So I will keep recreating those videos for as long as I can bear making them. I will say that, and as long as they keep performing well. So
absolutely, man. I mean, two things there, both the similar type of video formats and the ginger humor are two things I wanted to ask you about.
Yeah.
So even with the similar type of video formats, you have, what I would essentially call B-roll of you in the gym doing a particular exercise, and then you'll have some kind of caption there, right? And I think you've realized that some of those particular videos, if you rage bait people in a particular way, you can change the formula slightly and they're always going to perform.
Yeah.
But with the ginger videos, it's almost like self-deprecating humor.
Yes.
How does that kind of sit with you generally, right? Like the comfort in yourself and almost like security in yourself to be able to put these things together in a way that you're almost like laughing and encouraging others to laugh at you.
Yeah. I mean, if you're making fun of yourself, you take away any power that someone has over you in the sense, heading into the comment sections. I mean, I don't read them, but I'm sure there are some pretty choice words in the comment sections on some of these videos. But I mean, particularly more the rage bait ones, right? But I think with the ginger exercise videos, it is funny. As you said, it's self-deprecating humor, which is my type of humor. And I think you should be able to joke about everything in the right context, right? So I think more of the the issue with those videos is that I get a lot of redheads messaging me being like, please, my friends, everyone, my grandmother sent me this, please stop making these videos. And to that I would say just embrace it. It's it is funny, and I think you should be able to make fun of yourself. Like really, I wouldn't take myself too seriously. Yeah,
it's not that deep, right?
It's not.
No, and I think that's very you, man. Even from just knowing you all these years, like it's an expression of who you are. Like you're very comfortable in your own skin and, have no problem with taking the piss generally.
Yeah.
And even, you mentioned the comments, and that's something I think I've even asked you about on a more personal level too. Because, since I started posting videos on my own channel and, for those that are just watching this and are being introduced through this, I make video essays. We go into really like how and why questions, answering type of things that people would be curious about. And, and a lot of it, I give my own takes. I insert my opinion in there. I've dealt with comments attacking less so myself, but more so my ideas, right? And again, you've dealt with all kinds of comments in there. But I'm curious how you approach that, right? Because you say sometimes you don't even read them. I'm sure when you started, some of them might have stung, right? And hit at a certain point, especially when you were younger. But I guess I'm curious about the numbing process you went through to get to the stage that you're at now where they don't really affect you.
Yeah, so I'll speak to the stage I'm at now where I've completely gamified it, in that if I do receive negative comments, that to me is a good indicator that the video will do well to some extent. If it's one or two negative comments and it's on the material of the video, but I think I'm wise enough to differentiate between my intention with the video and someone disagreeing. So I will say there are certain comments that sometimes I read. I'm like, how have they come to that conclusion, right? And perhaps it's just misunderstanding where I'm coming from. I think a lot of the time my content is perhaps taken too seriously. I'm messing around a lot of the time. And for me, it's just a bit of fun. So if I receive negative comments, I'm like, okay, well, I think, as you said, there is a numbing process. So to begin with, when I was getting sort of, when I started out with the rage bait videos, I would read them and I'd be like, oh, like that is, like, it would more anger me to the extent that what this person was saying could potentially lead other people to believe what they're saying. I'm thinking like, oh, it's ridiculous. This person has a platform to say such a, false premise. Like, it's built off of nothing, right? So that would anger me because, there's almost a sheep mentality in the comment section. People will like comments just to build upon that hate, and that will spiral. And then almost you've brought up this idea which is completely unfounded in the comments, but people read it and they're like, oh, okay, yeah, let's hate on this guy. So to begin with, that did, I suppose, annoy me, but it's a numbers game. You put out enough videos and you realize, what's the grand scheme? Yeah, maybe I received a couple hundred hate comments, but what have I gained, X amount in terms of money, in terms of sponsorships. I've gained a lot more followers through it. With the intention of just growing the personal brand, it's something you need to look past. And I think you need to have a thick skin. And some people are just not built for that. For me, I've always taken the piss out of myself. I'm really just not a serious person, so it's something I can look past. But you know, it's not for everyone, for sure.
No, it makes sense. And I think especially in the space you're in, it's easy to get a lot of hate comments, right?
Absolutely.
And from the keyboard warriors who hide behind
Dude, Chubby McCheese and his many cheeses.
Yeah, with a non-profile picture and a discreet name, right? Even based on that, right? Because you need the comments to be able to grow. And the comments are a sign of engagement. And in the end of the day, the people who like you are less likely to comment than the people who don't.
Exactly.
Right? And that's the whole point of the rage baiting in the first place.
Exactly.
But, you know, you're doing this to grow your brand, get the followers, and in the end goal, as much as the big numbers are cool and the social platforms might pay you something for it, the big money comes from sponsorships. And, you know, I shared this with you when I first saw it, but, you know, just to go into it a little bit, when I saw the first picture posted of you posing in the Gymshark HQ with the sponsorship announcement, and then later with that picture of you with the barbell that's on the tube now and, you know, becoming a staple of it. Like, honestly, even for me, that was a moment of pride, just like through proxy of you. So I'd love to know kind of like your feelings towards that, right? Like that moment where it finally crossed the line and like the 15-year-old version of yourself that maybe started posting content with that in mind, finally being able to reach it at 23, 24. How did that land? How did that feel?
Yeah, I think with the Gymshark sponsorship, that was a pinch me moment. And I think, I mean, what I know now is that, you know, it's just another brand. It's just another company. It's not another group of people that have built this community. But really, I think looking back, like when I was 15, that would have been, I wouldn't be able to fathom that idea, right? Or that would have been the end goal right there. And the campaign was very cool. I do think with a few of these things, because it all happens so fast, because, you know, prior to this year, I wasn't, you know, getting paid for sponsorships. It was more just like, oh, we'll give you product and then you generate commission. But, you know, this year I've managed to secure 3 well-paid sponsorships with some formidable brands. And I think because of how fast it's moved, I mean, this is, you know, to my own detriment, I haven't properly been present with it because the ball just keeps rolling. That's it. Like, what's the next big thing? So I think, you know, looking back on Gymshark, I'm thinking, okay, that's cool. That is cool. But, you know, what's next? Because at the end of the day, it is a brand. You know, they're trying to generate a return on their investment with me. It is a business move. You know, so as much as I can create thematics with it and romanticize this, oh, they love me for me, like all that, you know, all that jazz. It is a business move. They have an influencer marketing budget to spend. They've allocated X amount to me. And yeah, and then my job is to just push the product, wear the product, things of that nature, showcase the product in its best light. Well, I say best light. If I will happily speak about products I don't like, but looking back at what it meant to me when I was 15, it was the end goal, because at the time, again, the crescendo of fitness with David Lade and all these, you know, other big names, you know, coming up with the brand. And I think it's more the community that they built around that. It's the events. So yeah, I think more so than the clothing, it was a cool moment because, you know, I'd always seen pictures of people posed outside of the Gymshark HQ, and that got to me doing that. So yeah, it was cool. But I think I should have been a bit more present with the experience for sure. Looking back, that's something, yeah, I would have. Yeah,
man, because I think you definitely took a very rational approach of like, you know, this was cool, what's next?
Yeah.
And in the end of the day, you're not wrong for that. But I also think you need to appreciate these little moments.
Yeah.
Right? Especially that one, because that's something that, you know, it's as I said, I felt pride through proxy of even just being around you and knowing that was something you wanted to get to. Yeah, man, like it's an achievement, you know, and it's a brand that, as you said, more than anything, managed to build a community around what they stand for.
Yeah.
Right? And you'll see people in all walks of life walking around the street wearing Gymshark because that brand represents something to them, you know? And to be associated with that, I think is really cool as a whole.
Yeah, no, it has been cool, definitely. And I think, yeah, that's something I'm personally trying to work on. Just, stop thinking so much in the future, enjoy the present. Because, it's hard when things move fast because you have to say no to a lot more. Because as soon as people see you doing something, you start getting more invites, you start getting people, trying to almost bring you off this path. And you have to be very upfront with saying no to a lot of things, or just really evaluating the opportunities in front of you, because there's so many different pathways you can take. But yeah, that was one. And I think particularly with the We Do Gym campaign, that was a cool moment. I mean, to be completely honest with you, I wish they would have told me ahead of time what the actual shoot was. I showed up on the day and I was told, okay, you're going to be under a bench press. Well, I'm thinking, well, I haven't bench pressed in over a year. And then they show me sort of, like models of what it would look like, and a few inspiration shots from other brands. And I'm like, all right, well, it's probably not going to be the best look for me. I mean, I'm going to have to bring out the constipation face for sure. I got under the bar actually, and I had to pause rep 120 kilograms, which, my one rep max at my all-time strongest was about 140. Hadn't done bench in a year, so pause repping 120 was just not feasible. I mean, I love that they thought I was way stronger than I was. So the face you see on that campaign is a very real real reaction to the weight on the bar. But yeah, it was a very cool experience for sure.
Oh, amazing, man. And even, I mean, you touched on the business side and how it is a business decision for them, and at the end of the day, it's something that needs to work for you as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
How does it come to that, right? Because, I've worked with influencers as well, and being able to essentially connect people, creators, with brands to help the brands make sales. And it's not every creator who's able to. And, even just from our conversations before, I know that, definitely no need to go into numbers, but you're able to make good returns, not just for Gymshark, but for your other sponsors too, MyProtein, VQ.
Yep.
Why do you think you're able to perform in terms of sponsorships, and what does it take to actually sell as an influencer?
Yeah, I think first just to delve into the types of deals that brands will offer. So more often than not, for smaller pages, a brand will try and get away with, a deal where they're on, okay, we'll send you X amount of products per month. You can earn up to usually 15% commission using your code, and that'll be sort of the income you make from that. They won't be paying you a flat fee each month. As your page grows, you can sort of, you open up these opportunities. I think it's crazy how exponential that is in terms of the sort of offering you get once you hit a type of engagement, but also the community that you've built, and also the speed of growth. That's very important too, which is why the content that does grow your page, that's why you do need to implement an element of that. It can't just be building upon your current community. You always got to be thinking about the funnel for expansion, right? So yeah, that's those are the two types of ways you would make money through sponsorships. In the latter, they would offer you a fixed amount per month, and they would likely offer you a lower amount in terms of commission, because it's for them, it's so much a balancing act between, okay, we have this fixed cost, which is going out to them every month, but then we had the variable cost in terms of sales. For me, I would always prefer, I think, a larger fixed income, and then a maybe potentially smaller variable cost. But honestly, that depends on the brand. It depends on the penetration in terms of my audience and where they're from. For example, I have a very large following in the US, so a US brand would perform very well. So that's something you need to keep in mind. But I think in terms of being able to do well in sales, you have to understand, again, your demographics, where your audience is coming from. For me, they are mostly between the ages of 18 to 30. Obviously, male dominant. That's a staple in the fitness scene. So it's probably about 15% female, 85% male. And just through knowing that, I am happy to partner with certain brands that are based out of the US, that have very fast shipping in the US, because you want to really limit the annoying touch points between, okay, I'm based up in New York and I have to order something for a brand. Okay, does this brand offer next day delivery? These are things you have to bear in mind for sure, because if someone's going to use your code and you're going to generate a sale, you need to think about that user journey, which I don't think a lot of people do. They see the brand name, they're like, oh, that's instantly, yes, but there are so many, I guess, limiting factors to that. And at the end of the day, there's no point in joining a brand if they're going to kick you out a few months later because you're just not generating sales. So you need to think about, which brand you're joining. Will you be able to generate sales? I mean, I'll even touch upon this, but, one of the first brands that I worked with, Hard Body, I will speak to the fact that, it's sort of a gym accessories brand. So they sell straps, they sell belts. And one thing I didn't really consider at the time of joining was how often someone is going to be buying a pair of straps, a really high quality belt. These are high ticket items in that maybe a belt would cost, I'm not sure, maybe 80 pounds, right? But how often are you buying a belt? If you're buying a good quality belt, you won't buy one for, 3-4 years, right? So I'm trying to sell this individual a belt that they will buy every 3-4 years. But in terms of the amount of content I'm making to do that, it's not, there's no justification of that. It's the amount of content I'm making and comparing that to the amount of sales I can make. So that was sort of a moment for me where I was like, okay, I need to really consider what it is I can sell on this page, what comes naturally. A piece of clothing like Gymshark, like people shop the sales like every month. You know what I mean? Like everyone wants more tank tops, more shirts. They want the latest Gymshark drop. So you have to think about the frequency of product renewals. You have to think about where your audience is and will they be buying it often, how expensive an average piece of clothing is there. But at the end of the day, it's all about how many sales you're able to make, the average sale value, and it has to make sense for the business. So if the business is paying you X amount in terms of fixed salary, you have to be generating a lot more than that for them to justify paying you that, right? Because at the end of the day, again, it's all about the ROI for them. And yeah, there is some, intangibles and I guess goodwill in the sense that they're like, well, you look good for the page. We use you for other campaigns, which is why it's so important to be able to network and really build your value, elsewhere other than just those sales.
No, 100%. And even just association with you, right? Depending on who you are. Not everyone is going to have that kind of aura, I guess, to them, where
Absolutely.
a brand is going to be sold on just the fact that they're associated with you beyond the raw numbers of what that looks like. But some people definitely have that pull. And I think it also ties back to what you were saying before in terms of knowing what to say no to, right? Because I think once you get into a position, especially one like you've put yourself, and across life, at least from my experience and what I've seen of people and even just my own journey, it's like if you prove yourself valuable, meet enough people, and show enough of yourself and the qualities you have, you're going to get more opportunities than you can say yes to. So you're not then judged on what you're saying yes to. It's more down to what you say no to, right? And what you're willing to not do in order to do what you're actually doing, right? And what that says about you. And I think with these brands, it's exactly that. Like you could go and take 15 different brand deals and post all this content about brand deals.
Yeah.
But to even be able to meet your deliverables, you're going to have to be posting 100 stories a day, never mind what it takes to actually grow your page, right?
It's funny you mentioned that. I think that's a point that I believe Chris Williamson brought up in one of his recent podcasts. It's like he gets a lot of hate for certain things that he does, but it's you haven't seen the 15, 20 brand deals that he's turned down because it wouldn't fit his page. It would be selling out. It wouldn't fit his set of beliefs, right? So yeah, there's a lot that goes on behind closed doors in terms of trying to make moves for these business opportunities that people don't see. But again, you're being judged on what you've done rather than what you, I guess, haven't done. So,
and on a different topic, fitness and Instagram. So the industry has been molded by the platform, and in a lot of ways, the platform itself and the way that at least the niche within the platform works has been changed by the industry. They both kind of feed into each other. You're in a slightly different position, I'd say, because you post entertainment rather than educational content.
Correct.
More so. But there are a lot of people who post educational content, and there's a lot of people who try to post educational content but aren't necessarily doing it in a way that is a net positive for society, if we put it that way.
Yeah.
How do you view the educator side of social media and the advice that people put out there and like the different directions that people can be pulled on?
Yeah, so there was a period of time where I would say I was trying to create content which was more educational, and the thought process behind that was I wanted to lead people down the route of online coaching. I was considering that as another stream of revenue. Sort of fast forward to now, I don't enjoy making the educational content as much. And I've also, I don't have time to do the online coaching. So I've had to shut down that side of the business. It just doesn't, it's not something I enjoy doing. It's not something that I would consider to be a good use of my time. So during that brief stint of creating the educational content, it's funny because you're sort of, there's nothing inherently unique about that content. I mean, I guess the way in which you make the content can be unique, but the messaging itself doesn't bring out enough personality for me to enjoy making that. So for me, the entertainment side, that's where you could really showcase personality. Also, I think Instagram puts pages into sort of, they put them into groups, and for some pages, the educational content would do really well because that's the type of audience that you've built off of the back of that. But for me, it was just too stark of a switch. Why would someone want to know about, these training principles from me while they have a slew of online content that is, that's their niche. It's targeted for people to learn, right? So that's the first question. Why me? Why am I an authority in this space to be talking about this? And I don't think I am, so I won't. And it's not something I enjoy doing. So it's pretty much as simple as that. I do think there's, if you look at these educational, pages, it's very clear that they're selling something, which is absolutely fine. You have to. All the online coaches, I think that's really taken off in the past 4 years. Online coaching, it's the laptop lifestyle. It's the, fuck off to Dubai and pay zero taxes sort of get you play. And all power to you. That's great if you can make that work. But I think, the content that comes along with that is, in my opinion, very mundane. It does lack personality, it lacks some creativity, and it's just not something that I personally wanted to do. But that's one side of Instagram. There's always going to be a market for that because, there's always, again, a market for people that just need to have this knowledge, and need some help, need some accountability, and need an online coach. So, but personally for me, it's not something I enjoyed doing or it just didn't speak to me. That's just not for me.
Yeah, I remember back in my day, 15, 16, a similar time to you, bodybuilding.com was the way I'd go at least.
It's the GOAT, the Bible.
the Bible, literally. Just go up there, check the different back workouts I can do.
One rep max calculator.
Type thing.
That was the one,
Your calorie calculator too. Gotta have the whole shebang.
Yeah.
But circling again to Instagram specifically, I remember a while back speaking about the Liver King with you. And how he would claim that he was natty and he wasn't taking anything.
He was natty.
I mean, I was naive, let's put it that way.
Sure.
I was I had no real clue.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is he's not the only one doing that, right? There's a lot of people out there that will say that they're not taking anything and this is all training and will try to sell either supplements or a training program off the back of that. So really, I guess one direction to go from that is how can you, who has more of a trained eye, at least than I do, tell when someone is more truthful versus full of shit?
In terms of being natural or not?
In terms of being natural, and even in terms of the messaging they're putting across and how they portray themselves.
Yeah, I think you touched upon that. It's important to see what they're selling to begin with, and if they're selling a certain look, then it would make sense for them to be optimizing the way they look, right? Because let's be frank, if they're selling training programs and they look like Adonis or something like that, then more people are gonna be like, well, what's this person doing? Which is so funny to me, because if I look at someone who looks sick, there's no correlation between someone looking really good and them being a good coach, knowing anything about fitness or nutrition, and just anything in general. That there's a disconnect there, because those two things are not the same. People look the way they do because Mostly genetics, I will say. Because to be completely honest with you, when I started out in the gym, I had no idea what I was doing. And within 6 to 8 months, I looked better than most people at the gym. I wasn't eating right, looking back. I wasn't training properly. So, how do we reconcile those two things, right? Because I look sick, maybe I should tell people I should be an authority in this space. So yeah, I think the disconnect there is, why are people buying training programs from people that look good on Instagram? Makes no sense. I understand if from a personal brand point of view, you want to support this person, maybe you'll buy the training program, or if, they have some sort of qualifications and, they have science-backed videos, they make content around that, educating. But anyway, I digress. So the way I would honestly tell if someone is natural or not, it's very difficult to tell, because there could be periods of time where they were not natural, and you wouldn't know it because, again, it's masked by a bulk or whatever. But if I were to really think about it, I would look at sort of a fat-free mass index. So that's something that you could input their weight, you could input their height, their average body fat percentage, and it would spit out a number which roughly from 19 to 27 or 28, and you would compare this to people who are obviously not natural, like Chris Bumstead and or Arnold in his prime, and if they're getting close to that number, then you would safely assume, okay, there's something that they have too much muscle for their level of body fat or their height. That's a reasonable approach you can take, but even that there's outliers on either end, right? So that's the way I would look at it. There are a lot of people I see on my feed who I could confidently say they're not natural. I mean, whether or not they speak about it, it's none of my business, to be completely honest with you. I think people just need to be a bit more, just a bit more cynical about these things, because yeah, I mean, for example, the Liver King, when we spoke about this and you were convinced he was natural, it was comical. Like, there's, I don't know.
This was before it came out, by the way.
Yeah. And obviously there's no substitute for seeing a person, in front of you and being able to, because height plays a large part. I'm sure he was a manlet to some extent. Could be entirely wrong. It's unfounded, but
because I think in the end of the day, it also plays into like the image people have of themselves, right? Because it's like, you take steroids either because you need to look a certain way, in my opinion. You need to look a certain way to be able to present a certain image, to be able to sell something, or because you want to look a certain way to show something to yourself.
Well, I think the latter of what you just said is why a lot of people take them, which is not the correct way, in my opinion, because it's like buying a new MacBook Pro. Like, do I really need to drop $3,000 on a computer that's going to be 5% faster than the one I currently have? Well, if I'm working on these projects where I am generating a lot of money through the speed it takes me to edit something, then yeah, I could justify that. It's a tool, and I think people need to start viewing steroids as tools by which, if I want to step on the Olympia stage, realistically, you need to take steroids. That's just the way it is. Right? But someone taking steroids to master insecurities and just general self-image is not, I mean, that's just going down a rabbit hole, really. And at the end of the day, they're not going to be happy because, again, I think that just perpetuates this body dysmorphia that they have. And yeah, again, I think steroids should be viewed as a tool. Most people should not take them. I have nothing against people taking them because, again, at the top level of bodybuilding, it needs to be done. So
100%. And I think you just opened a whole can of worms there with the body dysmorphia.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's something that, especially now with other people being able to see other people so much on the screen of our phones all the time and on the TV screens and computers and whatever, like, you're put into contact with the version of people that they want to show to the internet a lot more than anyone 20 years ago and before would have ever had access to.
Yeah.
So you're constantly in a mental frame of, again, seeing these people at their best, sometimes in edited photos, sometimes in the best lighting nature could provide, and comparing it against yourself, where in a lot of cases, it causes feelings of like inadequacy, right? And many other more lowly feelings that go around that. And I think it's natural, especially like as young guys, to think like, oh, I'm too skinny, I'm gonna get into the gym. I know for the fact that that was it for me. And, you know, managed to put on quite a few kilos starting out. And then I had a period in my life where, you know, personally my health wasn't at a good point. And I'm sure I'll go deeper into this in future episodes. But long story short, lost 10 kilos in 6 months. My mental frame was shot. And, you know, life just wasn't as rosy as before. And a lot of that had to do with the importance that I gave to my body and my physical appearance as part of my self-worth. I know you've had, you know, your own episode with that. You described like during COVID being a tough time. But I'd love if you could open up and speak a bit about what you've seen with body dysmorphia as a whole and how people deal with this self-image problem, and maybe even anything you've seen that could help mitigate it.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head in that if you open your Instagram page, you're just bombarded with insane looking physiques. And I think the issue with body dysmorphia is that we all feel almost entitled when we see a physique. And we're like, I should look like that. And there's very little concern to what it takes to look like that. So funnily enough, my, I guess, worst body dysmorphia was at my leanest. I was about 3 weeks out from my bodybuilding show. I was dick skin peeled. Like there was, you know, very little fat on my frame. But, you know, you become accustomed to a certain way that you look or a certain lifestyle very quickly. Once you become accustomed to it, your, I guess, action threshold for looking like even crazier gets just more insane, because realistically, if I'm already 6% body fat, for me to lose the next 2% is way harder than for me to drop from 12% to 10%. So, you know, it's difficult when you're in that state of mind. So my worst self-image was a few weeks out from my bodybuilding show. Looking back on that, it's just so crazy to see. But, you know, if I think about that, the habits that got me to that, it was 20,000 steps a day. It was eating very little food. It was a gym sesh every single day. It was an hour of elliptical every day. You know, these are things that were non-negotiable for me to look that way. And I think that's what people should really be applying more. They should look past the, you know, the physique and be like, okay, what's this person actually doing to look that way? Because I'm telling you, you're not going to want to. I mean, the thing is, when you're in that moment and you look a certain way, you don't even appreciate it, because again, it's one of those where your endocrine system is absolutely tanked. And I'm speaking on the extreme of, you know, being very lean, because I think that's probably the more common case when you're looking on Instagram. You're very rarely seeing huge guys who aren't that lean. So they'll be massive and lean, or, you know, just lean, that sort of thing. So yeah, and I will say you're probably optimal around 10 to 15% body fat, right? Anything less, it's just like, you know, the girls care? No, they couldn't give a shit. I mean, as long as you have like some remnants of, you know, a core, it doesn't even have to be a six pack, just have like oblique lines, like that sort of thing, right? So yeah, you're doing it for yourself, but then at what cost? So like really weigh out pros and cons. I think, you know, not enough people potentially speak about the absolute, you know, graveyard that you're walking through in order to like really just get to that position, because that was probably the toughest time of my life mentally, because you have no energy to speak to people. You have no lust. You have no desire to really do anything other than the non-negotiables on the sheet of paper. And, you know, I was, at the beginning of prep, I was writing my thesis for my master's. And I'm so grateful it was the beginning of prep, because genuinely, I probably would have failed that paper. It was very, very difficult to you know, avoid the brain fog. And yeah, I think it's also, people get so like self-obsessed with this image, but like there's not enough people talking about like, oh, like how do you optimize the way you feel rather than how you optimize the way you look, because I would take the former any day. Absolutely.
No, 100%. I couldn't agree more. And even, having done a few bulking cycles myself and, putting on more fat than I'd like to and then having to cut it down. Like, for me personally, I know that if I want to be above a certain weight sustainably, it feels like shit. I'm forcing food down my throat. I'm eating at inconvenient times because I can't have these big meals that I'm not used to. So, I found some kind of level. Of course, like, I like to take on challenges and like set goals for myself. And that's kind of how like I keep exercising. But I very quickly, after going through my own period, realized that for me personally, the priority is to feel good and to be sustainable and to have something that you're happy with. You don't have to go out here looking like Adonis or like a Greek god. Like, of course you can. And if that's something you want to aspire to do, then by all means do. But for me personally, I just thought looking good, feeling happy, being able to live a sustainable life, that's what I wanted to optimize for.
Yeah, and sustainability is key there, because I think we've all gone down this treasure trove of I'm gonna be taking these supplements every day and that sort of thing, and like, you're really gonna be taking that every day? You're really gonna be supplementing this till the age of 60 just to feel a certain way? Like, really, you want to be able to wake up in the morning and not feel that you have to inhale 20 pills to feel a certain way. Just think about that. And it's the same with people taking steroids or just any other habit that you want to be able to live a sustainable lifestyle, in that you're not relying on anything really. And yeah, I think always it's very myopic to think that I will be able to supplement this every single day. Like, really think about the long-term play in terms of 20, 30 years down the line,
Longevity of this, 100%. We spoke about the bodybuilding competition very briefly through prep. I think we focus a lot on the costs there and what you had to go through to get there. I guess a remaining question is, what was the good that came from it? Like, how do you feel having done it, looking back at it, and maybe even while you were up on stage? Like, what was that moment like for you?
Yeah, I think from a business perspective, my page had grown the most during my competition prep. People love to get behind a story, and people also love to see when you're in the absolute gutter. There's something innately human about seeing someone else suffer to an extent that you don't have to suffer, and then just being able to follow that. So, me posting stories every day, being like, oh, like, this sucks, it's so difficult. People love that. It's really, people want to follow along that journey. Again, I laid it out at the start. It was a very simple 9 and 11 week prep. And, just even stating the end point just, got people on board, and just kept people updated. And so I think from that perspective, that garnered a lot of attention, and my page was growing very nicely. I could create a lot of content around that because obviously I had the transformations. I had people following along to try and, also lose some weight. And other than that, there's just something so satisfying about doing something that's incredibly difficult that not that many people would do. So I gained a lot of, dopamine from the experience. And it also sort of reassured me that, I can do that difficult thing. There's some sort of like masochistic element of me that just wants to challenge myself and go through the absolute gutters to come out the other side a bit stronger. That's like a trend with things that I like doing. If it's the hard path, I tend to take it. So with regards to that, it was easily one of the most challenging things I've done. Mentally, physically. I mean, just to give you an idea, I got to the end of it and I could barely stand up. I could barely walk. Sitting on a bed hurt because I had walnut glutes. I had very little body fat, and I had a resting heart rate of about 39. So I was existing with very little going on. So yeah, But it was a great experience, and I would potentially do it again if I had the time. It's a big if, because I'll be honest with you, my work involves, using my brain. So that's what you give up, really, because there's really not much going on past the 8-week out mark.
Yeah, because it's a full dedication to it, right? Because the side effects of it are, limited brain function, essentially.
Absolutely.
Outside of all the time that you're spending on those 20,000 steps, the elliptical, and the gym session every day.
And you don't want to see friends romantically. You don't want to get involved with anyone. There's just really, if you're weighing out the pros and cons, any rational person would be like, this makes no sense. I lost a lot of strength. I lost a lot of muscle. I probably still haven't gained back that muscle or the strength. I'm still experiencing the repercussions of that. But, realistically, do I want to, be able to add 5 kilograms to my bench? Do I really care? No. I'm 8 years deep into this fitness journey. I couldn't care less. You know what I mean?
I feel like you've ticked all the bucket list kind of weights that you wanted to hit in terms of how strong you wanted to be with your lifts.
Yeah. I think the big one for me was the 140 kilogram bench, so 3 plates.
140.
I hit that at 78 kilograms, so maybe slightly heavier than I'm at right now, which, given my body weight, is, I would say, very strong. So that would probably be my chief lift. I never really got into deadlifts. For me, the risk to reward probably wasn't there, and I know people would argue, well, it would be much lower if you did with proper form. But for me, I just didn't care.
Not even RDLs.
I do enjoy doing RDLs, but I wouldn't really push more than 100 kilograms. I prefer to do 8 to 12 rep range, and I think I learned early on that really strength, I was never going to be the strongest person. I would be very strong, and maybe to the layman I'd be incredibly strong, but I was never going to win any powerlifting competition. I wasn't the right build for it. The one thing I do have is that I can get very lean, and I could be in the trenches, and I'm fine with that. I'm very disciplined. I'm very structured. Even now, I'm not tracking my calories, but I can eyeball everything, and I eat mostly the same stuff every day, because it's that routine, it's that habit, and it offloads a lot of mental capacity to other areas of my life.
No, and I think you're someone who is able to take that discipline to a level that is honestly better than most people I know. Because, as I said in the introduction, you work in finance, and that's something I still want to go into. You have a undergraduate and a graduate degree, a postgraduate degree in finance. Big subjects, good universities. You've been on this gym journey this whole time. And, as a creator now, as an influencer, showing up to these events and doing the social side of things. So you fit time for everything in a way that I find fascinating at the smallest level. But even beyond that, you mentioned the bodybuilding contest was towards the end of your post-grad?
Correct, yeah. So I started in April, and I started the prep in April, and I graduated in June.
Mm-hmm.
So during that time span, I had to write my thesis. I also had to go on grad trip. Grad trip was about 5 weeks out of my first show. I was in the gutters. Looking back, I'm like, wow, that was a time. That was a time, because everyone was going out drinking, partying every day, and I had to say no to all of that. It was almost a test put in place for me, because it was tempting at times to go off the diet. I was in the hotel gym every day doing a session at the crack of dawn. I was walking around getting 20K steps, just exploring the city. And I was lucky because I had a friend who also didn't really want to go out and, go partying and drinking. So, I had some company. But, looking back, I'm really, my social interaction on that trip was just so limited. And I don't regret it for a second, because you always have the bigger picture in mind. When I step on that stage, am I going to have a regret that, I went crazy that week and I went off plan? It's so much easier for me to just shut everything down than allow a little bit and then get back on the plan. So it's very all or nothing, black and white mindset. But when I'm locked in on a goal, it's going to happen. And I'd already manifested it, really, to be honest with you. I already knew that the trip was coming and that would be the real test. And I passed. So I knew past that moment I was going to do well. That was it.
100%. I mean, that's a literal obstacle that you knew was in the way, but I feel like life has a way of putting obstacles in front of you when you have a goal that you're chasing after, and it's your job to be able to navigate it, you know, to prove that you really want it. But on that subject of balancing and multitasking, you know, beyond the prep itself, you started to become a creator just before you started your postgrad.
Correct.
So you did your entire postgraduate at LSC with what was probably brutal hours at times that you had to put in.
Yeah.
While being a creator.
Yep.
And then you've started your job, again, brutal hours at times, while being a creator.
Yep.
How has that experience been like?
I've loved it. Yeah. So when I was doing the postgrad, I just remember there was, because, you know, it was towards the start of me posting, and I had a schedule. I was posting every single day, no matter what, no matter how shit the content was. I did have this rule that was, I think I've spoken to you about this before, but if it took me longer to make the content than it does for me to shit, so I would literally make the content on the toilet, then it wasn't worth me making. I would say I probably value the content a little bit more now, so, you know, maybe we'll do, you know, a lengthy shit, or, you know, depends what I've eaten the night before, but but yeah, that was sort of the litmus test for if the content was worth making. But having said that, I also knew there were times of the day I needed to post to, you know, engage my audience. It's usually like 3 to 5 p.m. That's when my audience is on Instagram. So that would also coincide with my lectures. So I had usually 2 3-hour lectures per day, which 3 hours is honestly a very long time to focus for. And I would have to leave the lecture just for a couple of minutes to go to the toilet, to find the Wi-Fi, to post my TikTok and my Instagram. And I did that every single day. It's just, you know, so many of these things are so doable for so many people. It's just really, you know, prioritizing, because there's always something that's going to grab your attention. When you go on Instagram, like, what do you end up looking at? Well, whatever grabs your attention, that's what you're spending your time on. That's where your brain capacity is going towards, right? So I would leave the lecture, post Instagram, post TikTok, and I was very meticulous with how I spent my time. And if it wasn't in the Google Calendar, it wasn't happening. So I actually use Google Calendar as a tool to offload a lot of the, you know, a lot of everything that's going on up here. And so I can kind of momentarily forget a lot of things because it's in the calendar, so I know it's happening. And I would, you know, schedule my time down to the minute every single day to make sure I had time to perform at my master's, because education is important for me. I wanted to get a good job. And I also didn't want to close any doors, because, again, with the Instagram, TikTok side, I knew the opportunity in terms of what I could do with diversifying income streams, but also the people I would meet. So I really wanted to do well with it, because at the end of the day, I'm not, you know, I wasn't going to half-ass, you know, a fitness Instagram page. For me, it was, you know, I've created it, so I'm invested, and it's going to be good. So,
and again, this notion of going all in, making sure things are done well, I think is very, very natural to you.
Yeah.
And you have a saying, I'm going to butcher this, but when you need something to get done, give it to someone who already has way too much to get done. Something along these lines.
Precisely that, yeah. I find I am most productive when I'm overworked and, quite frankly, yeah, just have too much to do, because then it forces you to prioritize. It gives you that underlying level of anxiety. People always think anxiety is a bad thing. No, you need a constant level of anxiety to perform and really do anything to a high level, because otherwise, what's pushing you? It's so easy to put off, you know, this task, that task. Well, that's not immediately, you know, that's not due anytime soon. I'll just do it, you know. But, you know, a lot of people at uni experience that because, again, with large uni projects, there's no inherent need to do it early when you know that you could, you know, cram it in a matter of days before the deadline. So basically, yeah, for like 3 out of 4 weeks before the deadline, you're not experiencing any anxiety. But, you know, if you have a lot on your plate, and say you're managing an Instagram page that's making money, you have, you know, another side hustle going on, you're going to be very meticulous with your time, and you're going to plan out doing that way in advance. So I will say always being busy and just making sure that I don't have a lot of free time. That's when you get the best results. Yeah, diamonds are formed under pressure, really, and that's the way I do it.
Yeah, lighting that fire under your ass, right? Like
Yeah.
having something that's pushing you towards
Yeah.
something.
It's also something so satisfying about just being absolutely loaded with work and things to do and then just getting it done. Like that feeling is just, I love it. I chase after that feeling every time because I felt that a lot in the past and I just love replicating and just adding on more and more. And yeah, there's potential for burnout, and I've definitely burnt out in many instances. And I'm getting better at, mitigating that slightly and, taking breaks here and there, like interdispersing a little bit. But yeah, there's nothing that will substitute that feeling of I've just done a shit ton of stuff and yeah, it feels good.
The different income streams that
Yep.
you've spoken about. Definitely no need to reveal numbers or even like specifics if you don't want to. But just how you've managed to approach that, right? Because from a young age, most people in your position would probably just have the income stream from their day jobs.
Yeah.
But you have that, you have everything going on the social side, you have stuff beyond that. So I guess I'm looking more for principles than anything. Like, how do you approach creating these different income streams for yourself? And like, yeah, how did you view it as like a big game plan a few years ago when you started taking the steps towards getting here?
Yeah. So I think in terms of the types of people that got me into these principles, well, first of all, I did a lot of reading when I was younger. I actually don't do that much reading anymore. Probably could read a little bit more, but
Can relate.
yeah, its podcasts are too damn accessible, right? So I learned very early on that people save money to maintain it and invest money to build wealth. So for me, sort of the principle of compounding has always been at the front of my mind, right? So I actually started investing when I was 18, as soon as I was old enough to. And, my knowledge of investing was pretty limited. I hadn't gone through my degree yet. I hadn't done a lot of like empirical research. So it was a lot of stock picking and, you find out what does well. I mean, I essentially invested in companies that I liked, I believed would do well. Back in 2018, Apple's an easy pick. These large tech companies, very easy picks, very high price to earnings ratios. But, they perhaps weren't that because there is a lot of growth opportunity for them. So anyway, I started investing. I started, my side hustles. I started making money through photography and videography for small businesses. I took that money, created a business called Creador, which was a marketplace that linked creatives with small businesses, because essentially I wanted to outsource the job of, finding clients because it was very time consuming. It was a big drain of my time, and I wanted to create a platform that linked the two. So I did that. I worked on that for a few years. That was an amazing experience because it taught me a lot. It was my first business venture, I guess you could say, and I ended up selling that in 2022. It was never the goal to grow it to the point where I was working on that full time. It was just an experience that I wanted to have. So that was one stream. I've been investing since I was 18 in the stock market, and that's I'd say the biggest opportunity for most people because it's so easy to look at a stock price like just Apple or whatever and be like, oh, like I missed the mark, like I got in too late, and I'm 30 plus years old or I'm 40 plus years old. It's too late for me to start investing. With a decent amount of capital, with compounded interest, you can earn a lot of money very quickly. Also, if you look at, the Instagram accounts, through sponsorships, through program sales, through property, through, other assets invested in, such as, watches, etc. There's just, the way I see it is that diversification is the key for anything. So you don't want to hold a ton of concentration risk. I don't want my main source of incomes to come through the sponsorships and the full-time job, because those are things that are not in my control. I mean, even if you look at Instagram, you're at the mercy of Instagram's algorithm, and you don't know where the company will be in a year. You don't know how well your account will be performing in a year. So you want to almost, monetize that off the platform and, shift it into an area where you can control the outcome. But yeah, I think to any any young person listening or watching this, just really look at investing and the principle of compound interest over time, because it'll be your best friend, and that's how you generate wealth. So
yeah, especially when you start early and
Yeah.
you allow time to work in your favor. And that
yeah, I mean,
right?
people are far too impatient with things of that nature. So yeah, just relax, build up a little bit of, just start saving each month. Also start budgeting. Some people spend exuberant amounts on things that they do not need. Again, start viewing things through the lens of, I mean, obviously you do want some disposable income to enjoy your life, right? There's but really, yeah, start putting aside some money that you can just invest every single month, and you'll be very thankful. So
just to throw a curveball at you, you post this a lot, and I find it funny, but I always question myself. What does spam lateral raises mean?
Well, okay, so if we think about the ideal male physique, large shoulders, small waist, how do we how do we bring up this illusion of a small waist and wider shoulders? Well, okay, spam lateral, that's where spam lateral raises came in, right? So it's, the constant act of trying to build up our sort of our delts generally, but also just the middle delt here. So yeah, lateral raises, it's just the poster child of that, of that muscle group, right? So some people try and perform lateral raises every single day to try and build up that muscle. And I mean, really, in terms of results, you do need to be giving your muscles time to rest in order to muscle synthesis to take action. And there's so many elements, but yeah, people love, or gym bros love saying, "Oh, just spam lateral raises," because again, everyone wants that ideal like huge shoulders, tiny waist look. So I guess that's where it's come from. Yeah.
Do you spam lateral raises?
I don't actually, no. I used to, yeah, and for very little result. I would say progressive overload's probably more important in the sense that every session I do train shoulders. I'm really working on like the mind muscle connection, and also just increasing the weight from last time, or keeping the weight the same and then adding a rep or two here and there. So, but yeah, frequency is important, but I would say you don't have to spam them every day,
Yeah. I mean, I definitely won't have the time to go into all kinds of gym advice within this, but you mentioned progressive overload, having a calorie surplus if you want to gain weight, calorie deficit if you want to lose weight, training each muscle group as consistently as you can while giving time to rest, making sure you're hitting the right macros, especially enough protein for you to grow. Any over-level insight you want to add to that?
Sleep's probably the most underrated element in all of this, because people think they can outwork bad sleep. Not how that works. So yeah, I think consistently, I mean, if you're ever curious, just read the book or listen to the podcast Why We Sleep by, I believe, Matthew Walker.
Yeah.
He compares a bad night's sleep with being drunk, in a sense. Like cognitively you are impaired, so you're also shortening your life, which is key to note, right? So it's a bit counterintuitive to wake up at 3 a.m. to go for a run for reasons of health while you're also shortening your life. How do you reconcile those two? So yeah, sleep, very underrated. Being in a calorie deficit, actually, I think based on some studies, leads to a longer life. Not a large deficit, but not a surplus. So you do want to be sitting around your maintenance, I would say, for most people, if not a slight deficit. Cutting out a lot of processed foods, potentially. I think training-wise, just making sure you're getting enough volume per week. You're training with good intensity, and you're doing cardio as well as weights. You're not just doing weights in your bulk, right? You're doing weights and cardio year-round. Yeah, I mean, the rest is very simple. People overcomplicate it. It's super easy to get your head around.
Bodybuilding.com or ReadeReps training program for more insights into that. But yeah, man, I mean, just to start wrapping up then, one question I'm going to be asking all the guests that I have on, I'd love if you could share a quote, a story, an anecdote, anything that you can think of that like gives a message that you'd like to leave the viewer with.
Okay. Yeah, okay. There's something I could draw from. This is not original whatsoever. I actually heard this on the Chris Williamson podcast, but it is very... It just makes you think about a few things. So there's this story of, you may have heard this, the fisherman and the businessman.
The Mexican fisherman.
The Mexican fisherman and the businessman. I'm going to just distill it down to the main crux of it because it could be a long story depending on the route you go. So yeah, there's a businessman and a fisherman. Fisherman is sitting by the lake doing what he does best, fish. He's there a few hours a day. The businessman approaches him and is like, oh, like, you know, what are you doing? And the fisherman's like, well, I'm just fishing, I'm just catching a few fish for my family. He's like, well, the businessman says, how often do you do that? And the fisherman replies, just a few hours per day. And the businessman says, well, if you worked a bit harder and did this, for longer, then you'd be able to build up enough money to buy more boats, and then you could hire more people and you could expand the business. And the fisherman says, well, really, I just do it a few hours so I can, catch a few fish for my family, go home, spend time with my kids, have a nice evening where I go play guitar with my friends, and it's just that was his rationale for doing it. And the businessman says, well, if you build up, this whole business and you grow it, and you could potentially, hire more people, you could franchise it, you can IPO, and then the fisherman says, okay, but then what? And the businessman says, well, once you do that, you'll have all this money so that you could, you can come back to this and you'll only have to fish a few hours every day. And then the fisherman says, isn't that what I'm currently doing? And that's, the moral of the story is that, the fisherman has everything he already wanted, and you're going to get loads of advice from people who think you should be going, this way, that way. And realistically, he was already happy. He already had everything he needed, everything he wanted, and people overcomplicate their lives and then justify why they do it. So,
100%. I love that one. I have a short about it on my channel.
Do you? Okay.
But no, the story of the Mexican fisherman, and I think my takeaway from it at least is the life that you want to live is never going to be the one that others tell you you need to live. And it's always going to be the one that's true to yourself. And sometimes people make it out that they need to chase this particular path or go down and do this particular thing. But in the end of the day, you need to do what you want to do, right? And even I selected something to bring up myself as well, which, funny enough, like kind of relates to that. Because I said, people think about you much less than you think that they think about you. Your opinion about other people's opinion of you causes a lot more harm than their opinions ever do. So, again, focus on what you want to be doing. Do you be true to yourself, and things tend to figure themselves out.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Love that. Briefly, what's next for you?
Well, I will work my way up in the current job I'm working. I enjoy where I work. I enjoy the role I'm in. I will build my skill set. You look at any CEOs at these large companies, they have experience they have a lot of horizontal experience from different departments, different areas of companies, very diversified experience. That's what does well in a CEO position. I could see myself being, a CEO one day at a large company. And, I think this goes against this whole I need to be an entrepreneur to do all this and that and that. I think we're past the point where everyone needs to be an entrepreneur. It's nice to have a system in place and build on something that's already created. You don't have to build your own thing necessarily. So that's the business front. I think otherwise, I'm going to continue growing the Instagram and the TikTok. I'm just going to keep doing what I enjoy doing, which is going to the gym and just documenting my journey and just trying to have some fun with it. I don't consider it a job. I don't consider it work. It's just a bit of fun. And yeah.
No, I love that, man. And I have no doubt that whatever you keep doing, just with the intensity that you approach things with, the dedication that you put in, and your ability to just get shit done, I have no doubt that you'll be able to take it to whatever direction you feel. But I mean, yeah, to start wrapping up, honestly, huge honor to have you on as my first guest. I'm really grateful we were able to make this happen and to be able to launch for this convo.
No, it's an absolute pleasure to be here, and we should do this again in a few years.
Let me grow this a bit.
Yeah.
Let me take it somewhere. I'm sure you're going to be continuing your journey as well, and I'm sure we'll be able to run it up with a lot more value in a few years to come.
Absolutely.
If you enjoyed this first episode, definitely check out this next one that'll come up here once it's out. And if you want to check out any other videos on the channel where we cover video essays explaining how and why questions of how the world works and the different topics around that, you can check that out right here.